Oh, how beautiful that timing was. Just to remind you all to quiet your phones if you haven't done so yet. Would you pray with me a moment? Holy God, we want to be your people. Sometimes we're clueless. Sometimes you show us. Be here now. Pour out your Spirit on us. Meet us where we need to be met. Comfort us if we're frazzled. Challenge us if we're complacent. Be our God, for we long to be your people, after the manner of Jesus the Christ, who has shown us the way you would have us live if you were in human form. Through and in and by the name and Spirit of Jesus we pray, we say together, Amen. So, a place called home is our sermon series, our worship series from now through Pentecost. And today's, our topic is, there's always room for one more. And Beth, I really appreciate your sense of humor. There's always room for one more, because if you were here last week, you know that we were going to be bringing a new puppy into our family. And there he is, and his name is Finnegan. So just let's get this out of the way, because I left you with all kinds of drama last week about the name. It's Finnegan. We're going to call him Finn for short, and I have to ask Lady Di for permission, because when we met a few weeks ago, she said, I'm going to get a dog, and I'm thinking about naming him Finnegan. And I said, oh, no, that's what we're thinking. And she said, well, if you must pilfer it. I knew I could ask forgiveness and it would be okay. And wouldn't it be terrific to have two dogs named Finnegan in the Bethel community? That would be okay. You'll also notice that puppies are really cute, but he is got a little mischief in him as well. Like every young little life, one would hope, if we don't squash it. So, a room for one more is our theme for today. Always room for one more. And I went back to my childhood memories, because I grew up next door to a family that always made room. They had 5 kids. They had big extended families. They loved to eat together. And as you know, or maybe you don't, I grew up in Maine. And so I Googled Maine dining room tables. And that's the picture I got. And the nice thing about it is it's kind of rustic and everything, but the table next to the table that was found at my neighbor's didn't look quite so much like Better Homes and Gardens. Because this is kind of what the entrance to the house looked like. So you can begin to anticipate that their table probably didn't look like a Better Homes and Gardens table, and it didn't. And I'm wondering how many of you know about the famous manufacturer in clothing and fishing and outdoor apparel company, L.L. Bean. Okay? Most people have heard of that L.L. Bean. They haven't heard of the other Bean. And there was a book written called The Beans of Egypt, Maine, about a very different kind of Maine experience. And the family that I grew up with was actually very much more like this family than the family that would be wealthy and have a lovely table set. But they taught me about hospitality, because I remember as a little kid, my mother said, boy, I wish they would get their house painted. And I asked my friend Peter, who was my same age, and he said, well, my parents tried to get a loan at the bank and they couldn't get one. And that was the first time I realized that not everybody that wants to borrow money can borrow money. And even though they were poor, I would frequently get calls, hey David, we just got back with a mess of clams. Why don't you come over for some fried clams? Or we're going to have barbecue chicken. Come on over. And you can bring your mom and dad too. It was just amazing. They taught me that there was always room for one more. And I'm guessing most of us, when we think about this theme, especially since it's Mother's Day, we probably think of holiday meals where we're gathered together. And I know, at least in our house in recent years, we're never quite sure who's going to show up for Thanksgiving, so we need to be ready for a room for one other person or two or sometimes four. And at those times of festivals, it's we tend to be at our best to having room for one more. And so there are lots of family traditions. This is a celebration of Kwanzaa. So African Americans gather together, and this is Chinese New Year's, and see there are people gathered together, and I'm guessing you can figure out which celebration this is. Oktoberfest, for those of you who have a little German heritage in you. All those places, it sure looks like there's room for one more. This is an orphanage in Tijuana, Mexico. Most of us, when we think about Tijuana, we think about nightlife and wild parties, and I don't know what you think about, and I really don't want to know what you think about, but it's probably not orphanages. And I visited this orphanage probably about 20 years ago, and it was an amazing place in the middle of Tijuana. And when you looked up into the hills surrounding the orphanage, this is kind of what you saw. Lots and lots of little shacks sort of piled on top of each other. In extreme poverty. It was easy for me to understand why there was an orphanage, because life was so difficult. And here's the thing. Every night when we came back from building a house, it was a habitat effort. Every time we came back from building a house, the people from this community got together and created these amazing feasts. And there was always way more than we could ever eat. And we had a chance to go up and visit. And what was stunning to me is the children and the adults looked like they were pretty well put together. And it was actually miraculous that they lived in these little shacks. And yet either they were really good at sponge baths or something, but it was just incredible to me. And they always made sure there was room for one more. Sometimes I think people with less know how to be more hospitable. Not always. I've known some extremely generous, wealthy people. But there's almost the assumption that maybe we're not going to have enough. So when we do, wow, let's celebrate. Room. I think of that kind of radical welcome. Some of you may have heard, how many of you have heard the story of the Ethiopian eunuch before? Not read a whole lot in churches, because folks get a little twitchy about the implications of the physiology and anatomy. But here's what's really fascinating about this passage. And I've put it up here just so you can see that there are several critical pieces from the first two verses. So first of all, somehow God spoke to Philip. And this is what's miraculous. Diane reminded me, this happened right after the stoning of Stephen, which would have been one of the most horrific events for the early church. And so God hears a message, Philip hears a message that he's supposed to go to a place he doesn't want to go. Who wants to go to a desolate, dangerous road? Seems like there's lots of places. Aren't there lots of stories in the Bible about going someplace where you don't want to go? Ever had to go someplace where you don't want to go? Only to find out there was something there for you that you had no idea, and for someone else. So Philip went, and so here's what's interesting about the other main character, Ethiopian, which tells you that he is a foreigner. He's in just outside of Jerusalem. So one, he's from a different country. Two, there's a pretty good chance if he's from Ethiopia, his skin is black. Three, he is able to ride in a chariot because he is in charge of all of the finances of the Queen of Ethiopia. So this is not just your ordinary person trotting on down this desolate road. And there was a class of people, eunuchs, and they were castrated so that they would not have any incentive to have any heirs who might be able to access all of the money. So it was royalty's way of protecting royalty's wealth. And I don't know about you, well, it's Mother's Day, but let me talk to you as a male. This would not be an easy thing. The power of maleness is missing. And isn't it interesting that he has all kinds of power? It's a weird juxtaposition of powerless and power. And maybe it's precisely for that reason God said, Philip, you gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta go help this person understand how profoundly he is loved and welcomed. Because he was on a pilgrimage. That's the other key word here, pilgrimage. And we say lots of times that we're on a journey of faith. Guess what? He was on a journey of faith. He had to be a good Jew because he was doing what he was supposed to do. He was going to Jerusalem to worship at the high holy days. But I'm guessing he didn't find what he was looking for until he was on his way back. So the Spirit said, climb on in. He did. The eunuch said, Philip asked, do you understand that I need somebody? I need a guide. How many of us need guides? And I'm like, oh man, I need a guide. First step of spiritual maturity. And even as we're further along on the journey, I need a guide. I need some help. I'm kind of lost. How can I help? Come on in. Talk to me. Can you imagine what it would be like to be Philip, who was sort of he was certainly not royalty. He was kind of an ordinary guy. All of a sudden, there's another boundary crossed. Come on up. Pretty cool. And of course, here's this Isaiah passage about someone being led to slaughter for the sake of the people. And the eunuch wants to know, is Isaiah talking about himself or somebody else? And Philip chose the opportunity to preach Jesus, which is a wonderful way of saying preaching unconditional love in human form meant for all people, and sometimes that means pouring out yourself. He was mocked, put down, never got a fair trial. I'm guessing the eunuch could definitely relate to that. You don't get a choice in that class. So the eunuch said, yeah, who's he talking about? So they continued on down the road. The eunuch said, here's water. Why can't I be baptized? He was baptized on the spot, and he had gotten what he came for. We are all on a journey. We are all hoping to be encountering God along the way. And sometimes we need help getting there, because we oftentimes can feel like outsiders. And this story says, in no uncertain terms, any kind of barrier you can come up with, God is reaching beyond it to say, you are welcome. There is always room for one more. So happy Mother's Day, everybody. Mother's Day is one of the most challenging days in the life of the church because there are some people who love Mother's Day, some people who really can't stand Mother's Day, either because they couldn't have kids or for whatever reason they didn't have a good relationship with their mother, or sometimes we fall into the Hallmark category of worship. And so the affirmation today is for all who are mothers and anyone who has served as a mother. So This is just a message for some of you traditional mothers, being a mother, discovering strengths you didn't know you had, and dealing with fears you never knew existed. And as I said in the prayer, there's no such thing as a perfect mom, but there are millions of ways to be a good mom. So, here's what I want to share with you. Wisdom from a colleague of mine. Let's read this together. Not all women are mothers, and not all mothers are women. Mothering is an energy, an intention, a practice not specific to gender, sex, or type. This is my friend Jennifer Yoakum, who is the pastor of our UCC church in Forest Grove. Now, I trust you're not going to take the effort to drive to Forest Grove and you'll keep coming to Bethel. Jennifer is a wonderful human. She is an openly lesbian woman, and she is incredibly gifted, bright, and insightful. Those were her words. And she went on to say this: Jesus is a righteous mother. And there are going to be 4 texts up there. I would like all the women in the congregation to read the first section, the first paragraph. Women, mothering, feeds, heals, teaches, and fiercely protects. The most dangerous animal in the wild, not the largest, most sharply toothed or clawed variety, but a mother protecting its young. The most generous animal in the world is a mother feeding its young from its own life's resources. Men, next one. Jesus was a righteous mother. He taught, he fed, he healed, and he bled out his own life, indelibly marking the path to our salvation, our return home to the love of God. Not by strength, not by might, but by love, by mothering love, Jesus restored our hope. And in the next segment, I'd like any of you who are openly gay in the LGBTQ community or allies to read that 3rd paragraph together. In a time when societal constructs of gender are bending and blending, people fear losing sight of their roles in the world. When a woman does not bear a child by choice or by chance, she can still be a mother. When a man chooses to nurture and raise, to teach, to heal, to fiercely protect the young, the old, the infirm, he too is a mother. And together, all of us, we as followers of Jesus are called to become righteous mothers, bearing hope and raising justice in the name of God's own love. In this way, we all participate in Mother's Day. We all can frame it so that, like Jesus, we can be righteous mothers. And there was a part of me that was reading this like some of my off-colored friends would say, Jesus mothers. But I'd rather you think of how is it that we are supportive of each other in that Jesus righteous mothering way. So have fun today with all of your mothers. For those of you whose mothers have passed on, I sense that there'll be a way in which you will remember, give thanks, and find a way to pass on the love that your mom was able to give to you. And the people were heard to say, Amen. Let's join together in the singing of this